Sit down, I already poured your drink. Back so soon, must be a good one. You've got that look tonight, the one where you're not sure whether to laugh or shake your head. I've learned those are always the best stories. Take your time, I'm not going anywhere.
This one wasn't a case, not officially. A buddy of mine, we'll call him Dev, told me this story over drinks about 3 years ago, and I swear if I'd made it up, nobody would believe me. It's too perfect. It starts with a phone number. A random recycled phone number that Dev bought when he was 18 years old. And it ends with a man losing his career, his reputation, and every wall he'd spent a decade building to hide behind. 8 years, that's how long the fuse burned before it went off. Dev grew up in a mid-sized city, not rich, not poor, the kind of family where a phone was a luxury, not a given. When mobile phones started becoming common around 2004, his parents scraped together enough money to buy him a second-hand Nokia. Bulky thing, barely held a charge. But to an 18-year-old kid heading off to college with a 2-hour commute, it was everything. He promised himself he'd buy a real phone someday, his own phone with his own money. That chance came about a year later. Dev had been a sharp student in high school, district-level awards, math competitions, the kind of kid teachers actually remember. One of those awards came with a cash prize from a nationalized bank. Not a fortune, but enough. He walked into a shop and bought a Sony Ericsson, one of those little flip-style phones that felt like the future back then, and a premium SIM card, good number, easy to remember, the kind you'd keep for life. By the third day, the calls started. Is this Nasher? Can I speak with Mr. Nasher Kapoor? We're calling from First Capital regarding an outstanding balance. Dev would say wrong number and hang up, but they kept coming 3, 4, 5 times a day, all looking for this guy named Nasher. Banks, credit card companies, collection agencies. Dev figured it out pretty quick. The number had belonged to someone else before him, someone who'd abandoned it, and now every creditor this Nasher guy had ever dodged was calling Dev's brand new phone. Most people would have ditched the number, but Dev liked it. It was clean, easy to remember, and he'd paid good money for it. So instead of switching, he started blocking. One by one, every wrong number got added to the block list. Back then, blocking was stored on the phone itself, not the network. So every time Dev upgraded his phone, he'd lose all his blocks and have to start over. He kept a handwritten list, a notebook page filled with numbers, and every time he got a new device, he'd sit down and re-enter them all. He did this for 5 years. By 2009, Dev had graduated and landed his first real job at a tech company. Nothing fancy, entry level, but it was a start, and he was good at what he did. Then in 2010, he got reassigned. New project, new team, and a new manager everyone called Nash. In my line of work, you meet a lot of bad bosses. Petty ones, lazy ones who take credit and dodge blame. But Nash was a different breed. Nash was the kind of manager who didn't just want results, he wanted suffering. From minute one, the emails started. Urgent, critical, top priority. Every single one. Nash would change deadlines without warning, then publicly destroy anyone who missed them. He scheduled meetings during lunch breaks. He scheduled meetings after hours. Not because they were necessary, because he could. Dev told me Nash had this move. He'd walk behind your desk, stop and just stand there, wouldn't say anything for 10, 15 seconds, just breathe. Then he'd lean in and say something like, "Is this really the best you can do?" Quiet enough that only you could hear it. He took credit for every win, every single one. But when something went wrong, and in software things always go wrong, he'd line up the team in front of upper management and point fingers, publicly, by name. Morale was underground. People were burning out in 3 months, some quit, some transferred. The ones who stayed did it because they had mortgages and families and couldn't afford to walk away. Dev was one of them. Nash thought he was untouchable. In my experience, the ones who think that are always hiding something.
Funny how the universe keeps its receipts.
In 2012, Dev's company went through a merger. Nothing dramatic, same people, same desks, but they got a new email system, Microsoft Outlook, and with it came an organization chart. Every employee, full name, reporting structure, all laid out in a neat little tree. Dev was scrolling through it one afternoon, curious about the new hierarchy, when he stopped cold. Nash's full name was listed right there in the directory. Nasher Kapoor. Now, Dev told me he just sat there staring at the screen. Nasher isn't the most common name, but it's not unique either. Could be a coincidence, but Dev already knew two things. The Nasher who used to own his phone number was from the same area he grew up in, and Nash, his manager, had gone to the same school just a few years earlier. Dev had learned that months ago and been embarrassed by it. Still, he wanted to be sure. There was a retired teacher, a mentor who'd coached high school students in their area for 20 years. Old school guy, knew everybody. Dev called him and asked about a former student named Nasher Kapoor. The teacher remembered. Same neighborhood, same school, same person. Dev's shitty boss and the ghost who'd been haunting his phone for 8 years were the same man. Think about that for a second. For almost a decade, Dev had been fielding calls from banks, collection agencies, and credit card companies looking for this guy. He'd been blocking numbers, keeping lists, dealing with the headache of someone else's financial disasters. And the whole time, the guy responsible was right there, standing behind his desk, breathing down his neck, making his life miserable in a completely different way. In my line of work, you see coincidences all the time. But this wasn't a coincidence. This was a gift. Dev didn't do anything right away. He sat on it, thought about it, and then he started thinking about all those phone calls he'd been blocking. All those creditors who'd been searching for Nasher Kapoor for the better part of a decade. Searching and failing, because Nasher had been smart about it. He hadn't just abandoned one phone number. He'd used that same number as the contact for every financial product he'd ever opened. Loans, credit cards, lines of credit, and not just his own. He'd taken out loans in his wife's name, his parents' names, aunts, uncles, everyone in his family, same phone number for all of them. When the debts went bad and the calls started, he simply walked away from the number and got a new one. Clean slate. Let some kid deal with the fallout. Dev had been that kid, and now Dev had something those creditors had been hunting for almost 10 years. Knowledge of exactly who Nasher Kapoor was and where to find him. Dev's plan was elegant in its simplicity. No hacking, no confrontation, no risk. Just a phone and the truth. First, he went through his block list. 150 numbers, every creditor, every collection agency, every bank that had ever called looking for Nasher Kapoor. He unblocked them, all of them, every single one. The effect was immediate. Before the unblocking, he'd been getting maybe 5 or 6 calls a day, the ones he hadn't caught yet, or new creditors who'd bought the old debt. After, 15 to 18 calls daily. Then he changed his script. For 8 years, Dev's response had been the same: wrong number. 2 words and hang up. Simple, clean, end of conversation. Now, when a collector called, Dev was polite, friendly even. He'd say, "Oh, you're looking for Nasher. Yeah, he changed his number years ago. Let me help you out." And he'd give them Nasher's current mobile number. But he didn't stop there. "You might want to update your records," Dev would say. "And just in case he tries to dodge you again, here's his direct manager's number at work. That way you have a backup contact." Dev told me he was careful about it. Never angry, never vindictive on the phone, just a helpful guy passing along information that happened to be accurate. He wasn't lying about anything. He wasn't making false reports. He was simply correcting the record. Nasher Kapoor could be reached at this number. His employer could confirm his identity at this number. All true. The calls went out like seeds in the wind, and Dev went back to his desk and waited. In my experience, most revenge plans have a fatal flaw. People get emotional. They overplay their hand. They do something traceable, something that puts them at risk. Dev's plan had none of that. He just answered his phone and told the truth. No fingerprints, no evidence, nothing anyone could point to and say, "That's the guy who did this." You have to understand, these weren't polite customer service reps calling. When a bank can't collect on a debt, they sell it. They sell it to companies whose entire business model is finding people who don't want to be found and making them pay. These are people who call your workplace, who call your neighbors, who show up at your door. They'd been hunting Nasher for close to a decade, and suddenly someone handed them a live address. All Dev did was open the door. What walked through it was 8 years of unpaid debt, fraudulent loans, and 20 active legal cases that had been sitting in limbo because nobody could find the defendant.
He didn't light the fire, he just told it where to go.
The first thing Dev noticed was that Nash started coming to work looking rattled. The guy who used to strut through the office like he owned the building was suddenly checking his phone every 10 minutes and stepping outside to take calls. The unshakable Nash was shaking. Within the first 2 weeks, Nash's personal phone was ringing non-stop. Debt collectors from every direction, banks he'd defrauded, collection agencies that had been circling for years. They'd finally locked onto his scent, and they weren't letting go. But the real damage came from the second number Dev had given out, Nash's manager's direct line. There are multiple versions of what happened in that office, depending on who you ask, but the broad strokes are consistent. Nash's manager, a senior director, started receiving calls from collection agencies asking to verify employment for Nasher Kapoor. At first 1 or 2, then more. Then the agency started asking about outstanding debts, then about fraud allegations. When a company's senior leadership starts getting cold calls about an employee's personal financial crimes, that's not something you can sweep under the rug. HR got involved, legal got involved, and when they started pulling the thread, the whole thing unraveled. It turned out Nasher had been taking out loans and credit cards in the names of his wife, his parents, his aunts, his uncles, anyone whose information he could access. The total outstanding debt was north of $200,000. In that part of the world, that's not just a lot of money. That's life-changing, family-destroying money. There were 20 active cases filed against him across multiple institutions. 20, not 1 or 2 bad decisions. A systematic pattern of fraud stretching back over a decade. The only reason he'd gotten away with it for so long was that every application, every account, every contact form listed the same phone number, the one Dev now owned. When Nasher walked away from that number, he walked away from every trail the creditors had. He'd built his entire escape on the assumption that nobody would ever connect the dots, that the kid who inherited his old number would just keep saying wrong number forever. The company terminated Nash within 2 months. Not for the management style. Companies tolerate bad managers all the time, as long as the numbers look good. They fired him because having an employee with 20 active fraud cases and debt collectors calling the executive suite was a liability no company would carry. Dev told me that on Nash's last day, he walked out of the building carrying a single cardboard box, didn't say goodbye to anyone, didn't look at anyone, just walked to his car and drove away. Nobody from the office heard from him again. Dev stayed at that company for a few more years, got promoted actually. Without Nash grinding everyone down, the whole team started performing better. Funny how that works. Remove one person and suddenly 30 people can breathe again. The phone calls slowed down after Nash got exposed. Once the creditors had a real address and real contact information, they didn't need the old number anymore. After 20 years of fielding wrong number calls, Dev's phone finally went quiet. He still has that number, by the way, same one he bought with his award money when he was 18. Kept it through every phone upgrade, every job change, every move. He told me he'd earned it. When Dev finished telling me this story, I asked him the question I always ask. Do you feel bad about any of it? He thought about it, genuinely thought about it. Then he said, I didn't file the fraud cases, I didn't take the loans, I didn't steal from his own family. All I did was answer my phone and tell people where to find the man they were already looking for. And you know what? He's right. In my line of work, I've seen people destroy themselves trying to get revenge. They break laws, they cross lines, they become the thing they hate. Dev didn't do any of that. He just stopped protecting a man who'd never done a single thing to deserve protection. Sometimes the best revenge isn't a plan at all, it's just letting the truth catch up.
20 years of wrong calls, and the one time he answered honestly, it changed everything. Humans fascinate me. You'll carry someone else's burden for years, not out of loyalty, just habit. And then one day you decide to set it down, not out of cruelty, just because you finally realized it was never yours to carry. Tell me something. What's the longest you've protected someone who didn't deserve it? Same time next week. I'll be here. I always am.